All right, be turning to Joshua chapter 22. Joshua chapter 22 is what we're going to be studying this evening. I want to talk a little bit about unity. I realize, when you say and when you preach on things and you talk about things, sometimes folks think that, oh, we've got that problem or we've got that thing. And I don't know if anybody's gossiping here, and don't know anybody that's dealing with the problem or the little idea that we're going to talk about before we get into the chapter itself. It is to say back, I don't know. Let's see, mother died in 2020. So probably about 2015, probably somewhere in that neighborhood, 2014, 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. I wrote a bulletin article, and it was entitled, "If you're going to talk about me to God." And the premise of the bulletin article was, if you're going to say things about me, then tell God about it. That was the premise of the bulletin article. And my mother was living in West Tennessee, but we sent her bulletin on a weekly basis. And I went to visit her, and she said, "I want to ask you something." "Yes, ma'am." "Who's been talking about you? What have you been saying?" "Nothing. I just wrote It's sort of like we had, when I was in Waverly had a shopper that went out every, I'm going to get this wrong, every Wednesday, I think. The shopper went out, and it basically was just advertisements. And while I was there, I began writing a very short, about 4 or 5 paragraph little thing, not as big as a bulletin article, smaller than a bulletin article. And usually it just told a story and then made a point. And the guy that was publishing for him actually was a member of the church, and we were going to put all that in a book one day, and we never did. But anyway, then we got to run it in the paper. So the shopper came out on Wednesday, and the paper came out on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. We ran them in both. But anyway, I say all that to say this. I ran one that was entitled "Want to Lose Weight." And the premise was Hebrews 12. Lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. And we had 4 people call and wanted to know what kind of diet program we had going on at Waverly Church of Christ. So you got to be careful. Yeah. 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 So you have to be careful. But unity is important. Unity in the church is important. Really, the church can't go forward without it. One of the things that we'll talk about Sunday in Acts chapter 2, as we finish Acts chapter 2, is that the church was united at that point in time. When you look at the Bible, you think about, you understand that the Lord intended for the church to be united. When you look at John 17, Jesus prayed that they may be one, Father, as you are in me and I in you, that they may be one in us. You look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10, and you see Paul's plea for unity. So you have Christ's prayer, and then you have Paul's plea as he prays that there be no divisions among you when I come. And the word divisions there means internal strife, that there be none of that going on when I come. And then you look in Ephesians chapter 4, and Paul gives sort of the plan for a united church as he talks about one Lord, one faith, one baptism, the 7 ones there that are addressed in those verses. And you look at that and you think, and you realize the importance that the Lord placed upon the unity of the church and how important it is to be united. That if you have a group of people and 2, 3 want to do this over here, and 2, 3 that want to do this over here, and 2, 3 want to do this over here, and 2, 3 want to do this over there, and they all are pulling at the same time, that you can't get anything done. And then sometimes you can all get what you want done if you come together and you do, we'll do a little bit over here. It's called compromise, a little bit over there and a little bit over there. And I found that most folks don't want to compromise what they want to do. And I'm not talking about matters of faith now, I'm talking about matters of opinion. It is interesting in the church that for the most part, not always, but for the most part, our problems are not matters of faith. They're matters of opinion. It has probably always been that way, and it will always be that way. I will say in some ways it's changing more to a 50-50 split, and more churches are dividing in the last, say, 20 years over doctrinal matters, so thus matters of faith and not matters of opinion. But unity is what sort of greases the gears and keeps everything going the right way. And when a church isn't united, and of course, I think most know that I came from a church that had problem in Dixon. And what we found out was what we knew and what I had been preaching for many years, and that is, unless we work together, we ain't gonna make it. And when we decided, or when some, excuse me, not we, but some others decided that we didn't need to work together, then we had problems. And so consequently, I was thinking about all of that and thinking about many other things when I was reading and studying this chapter tonight. And one of the great things you find out about in Joshua chapter 22 is that the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Remember, God had promised them, or Moses had promised them, that they could end up on the east side of the Jordan River. Everybody else was going to end up on the west side, but they could have the land on the east side of the Jordan River. And the promise was, or the commitment was, that you've got to stay and you've got to fight with your people. And as long as you stay and fight with your people, that land can be yours. And so what happens, and what we're fixing to see in the first part of this chapter is that Joshua tells them, you can go home now. We're finished. And so as we kind of ran through a lot of chapters last week, and I know we did, but there wasn't a lot of substance for us, meat for us to get out of the verses or the chapters. What we found out, though, was the land was settled. The tribes, each one got their land portion that God had promised. And thus, as they got their land promise, as they got the promise that God had made to them, Joshua now calls the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Look with me, beginning in Joshua chapter 22, verse 1. And one of the things we're going to find out is unity within the whole group. And we'll see that there's a little bit of a problem, and yet they're able to settle it. Then, and that connects us, the word then connects us with what we just studied last week about the settlement of the land to what's fixing to happen now. So they've conquered all the land, they've settled it, they've portioned it out, they've begun to all inhabit it. And so now what are you going to do? Well, Joshua calls the tribes of Reubenites, or he calls the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And he said to them, you have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. Now, so they've kept. The word kept there is interesting. It's the idea of keep, but it's also the idea of guarding or watching. So you've done, you've guarded, you've kept, you've watched all that Moses told you. And if you need the understanding of that, go back to the book of Numbers, chapter 32, verse 18. But not only what Moses told you, but you also obeyed the voice of everything that I said. And notice, I think the key word there is right towards the end of verse 2, all that I commanded you. You've not left, verse 3, you've not left your brethren these many days up to this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. You've done what we've asked you to do. You're faithful. Now that gets us really to the point where we ended last week. And so, verse 4, now the Lord your God has given rest to your brethren. God, in his providence and in his care, has finally made the land at peace. And he says, now therefore return, remember he's talking to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. Return and go to your tents and to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Go home. They are being, if you will, commissioned, expelled, ever what you want to call it. They're being told, go home. Return home. Excuse me. But they're being told to return home under the best of circumstances. You've done everything you promised you would do and everything we asked of you. And so go home. Go back to the land, go back to your people, because now not everybody came. Just those that would fight. And so he says, verse 5, but take careful heed. Now, some versions have the word diligence. It's the idea, once again, of guard or watch. Take careful heed. Be careful. Watch. To do the commandments and the law which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you. To love the Lord your God. And this is found several places in the Bible. One of the first places that it's found is Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. But this is what God wants for his children to do. Well, what do you want us to do? I want you to love the Lord your God. I want you to desire him. The idea here is to long after him. It's the idea of wanting to take a breath when you can't, to breathe after. And so I want you to long for him. I want you to love the Lord your God, to walk in all of his ways. I want you to walk in the paths that he's told you to walk in. I want you to keep his commandments, do everything that he's told you to do, to hold fast to him. Don't let go. Hold to him. Grab a hold of him and don't let go. And to serve him wherever you can with whatever you have. I want you to serve him with all of your heart and all your soul, all your heart, all your affection. I want you to do everything you can. I want you to serve him, though, but really, you might say, to love and to obey him and to walk in his commandments. I want you to do it with all your heart, with all your affection, and with all your soul, with your whole life. The word soul there has the idea of life or breath. With all of your being. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now, to the half tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given possession of Bashan. But to the other half of it, Joshua gave possession among their brethren on this side of the Jordan, westward. And indeed, when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them and spoke to them, saying, return with much riches to your tents, with very much livestock, with silver, with gold, with bronze, with iron, and with very much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brethren. Share. Now, think about that. He's sending the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half tribe of Manasseh, he's sending them back, east side of the Jordan River. That's where you're supposed to go. But he doesn't just send them back and say, good luck. He sends them back with the bounty which they have captured as they have captured the land. Now you wonder, let me change that. I wonder when they were fighting, when they were marching around the wall of Jericho, when they were at Ai, and they were at all the different places in Bethel and all the different places that they went. If the folks from Reuben and Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh that felt like they would be going back to where some of their people were and going back to the land that Moses had promised, well, I wonder if we're going to have to leave all this here. Wonder if here we are, we're fighting for our brethren, just like we said, and we'll continue to do that. But we're not going to get a thing out of this, except we're going to get our homeland back. But that's it. But Joshua doesn't send them back empty-handed. Here's the bounty of what you took. Take it back. And notice it's the idea of sharing. There's the idea of, okay, we're going to be kind to you. We're going to be nice to you. You see, there's the unity involved. We're going to share with you what we need to share with you. We're going to be as one. The problem is going to be here in just a few minutes, a few verses down. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Anything else? So the children, verse 9, of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh returned, departed from the children of Israel at Shiloh. Now, Shiloh is important. Why is Shiloh important? What did they set up at Shiloh? The tabernacle, the altar, yeah, tabernacle and the altar. And that was the meeting place, so to speak. That's the gathering place. That's where you came. The tent of gathering, they called it in a couple of places in the text. This is where the children of Israel came. This is where they started from. This is where they dispersed from. This is the place where they're to be. And so they go back, which is, it says, they departed the children of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they had obtained according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. In other words, they're leaving, but they left from Shiloh. Shiloh, if you want a New Testament equivalent, remember, where did Paul always leave from to go on his missionary journeys? Antioch. And so just like Paul left, kind of used Antioch sort of as a base, Shiloh was considered, because the tabernacle was there, the altar was there. They considered that the home, if you will. Well, some are going to say, well, wait a minute, Jerusalem. Well, no, right now, we'll get, if we keep studying the Old Testament, we'll get it to Jerusalem. But right now, the tabernacle is in Shiloh. And so that's the place. That is the place. That is the place of worship. That is the place to offer your sacrifices. That is the place to come together. Anything else? And when they came to the region of Jordan, which is the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a great and impressive altar. Altar would probably, I was reading trying to figure that part out. What did it look like? What did people think it looked like? Did it look like the altar with regards to the altar that sacrifices were made at Shiloh? And it seems as if most folks feel like, yes, it looked very much similar, very much made of rock, but probably similar, except that there's a feeling in this text we kind of get, or at least I get from it, and that is because it calls it a great and impressive altar, that it's probably bigger. It's probably a lot bigger. And so they build, what happens is they're going home, right before they get to the Jordan River, they stop. And they Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, they build this very large, very impressive altar. Now that's going to create a problem. And there are times in which folks do things that create problems. And we have to be careful. The old saying goes that in matters of faith, there needs to be unity, but in matters of opinion, there needs to be liberty, is, I think, a very true statement. And the reality of it is we can't say, well, we got to, if we have one negative, we're not going to do it. I know of people, that have said that. I've been involved in congregations that elders have said, well, we go into an elders meeting and we have 3, 5 elders, whatever. And if we have one that says no, we're not going to do it. And I asked an elder once, I said, when did you all start with minority rule? He said, we don't have minority rule. And I said, yeah, you do. He said, well, how you figure? I said, we got 4 elders. Right. I said, if only one says no, we don't do it. He said, that's right. I said, that's minority rule. He thought long and hard about that. He finally came to the conclusion I was right, but he didn't get it changed. But still, sometimes you just do. I guess because I was brought up this way, My father was an elder at Main Street Church of Christ in Milan for many years, and they had, during his tenure, as many as 8 elders, and as few as, I think they got down to 5. I know they got down to 5 one time. Might have gotten down to 4. But anyway, Dad always said that, he said, we go into a room, and he said, we may not always agree. He said, matter of fact, we really come from different parts of the world. Sometimes it seems like. But Dad said, he said, we go into a room, and he said, everybody has his say. Not everybody has his way, but when we walk out, the brethren have no idea what was said and who was for it, who was against it. We just made the decision. This is what we're going to do. And we do it. We're doing it for the betterment of the congregation, for the best. We think it's the best for the congregation. And thankfully, and still to this day, as far as I know, that's what they still do. And that's what the congregation moves forward there in Milan. Well, that's important, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a meeting of the minds here over this great altar, because there's a misunderstanding, at least in thinking. You see, you never know what people are thinking until you do what? You what? Tell them or ask. Yeah. Until if I tell you what I'm thinking, then you know, or if I'm wanting to know what you're thinking, then I have to ask you. And that's what's going to happen here. So let's imposing. Right. Well, they're going to tell them why, because they're going to ask them. But yes, that's it. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. It's a good point. Anything else? Verse 11. Now the children of Israel heard someone say, "Behold, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh." I don't know why they didn't just say those over there. But anyway, have built an altar on the frontier. That's an interesting word. The New King James Version uses the word frontier. That's interesting. It just means front. And it's interesting that they consider the land closest to the Jordan River the front. But nevertheless, the front of the land of Canaan, in the region of the Jordan, on the children of Israel's side. So in other words, on the west side of the Jordan River, that's where they built this altar. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh. Remember, they're gathering together at the tabernacle. They're gathering together at the tent of meeting to go to war against them. They're ready to fight. So here's what happens. You got all the folks to the west. Hear that all the folks to the east have built this altar. Now, before we get into it, and I know you've studied this before several times, but I want you to kind of think about it as if you've never thought about it before. Think about it. You're sitting there, and you're with the whole bunch on the west side of the Jordan River, and you're thinking, wait a minute. The Lord, back in chapter 18 of the book of Joshua, the Lord has established Shiloh as a place for the tabernacle. And admittedly, it's on kind of on in to the west side of the Jordan River. It's on our side. And we're all right with that. But here these folks that are on the east side of the Jordan River. They wanted an altar closer to them, so they went and built an altar. And look what they've done. They have shamed the Lord. They have shamed us. And they're going to do something that God would want them to do. Well, let's just go fight them. That's the thought right there. And in some ways you might say, well, that's justified. Well, it is until you find out why they wanted to build it. And that's where we are. Verse 13. The children of Israel sent Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, to the children of Reuben, to the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead, and with him 10 rulers, one ruler each from the excuse me. Let me read this again. And with him 10 rulers, one ruler each from the chief house of every tribe of Israel. And one was the head of the house of his father among the divisions of Israel. So what they did, notice what they're doing now. The children of Israel decide to send out an ambassador. We're going to investigate. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk to them and we're going to find out what they were thinking and why they did this and why would they do it to us and why would they do this to God. And so what do? Well, they send Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest of the children of Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh. They sent 10 rulers. In other words, there's a representative from all of the tribes that are on the west side of the Jordan River. And not only is there a ruler or a leader of the house, but that represented each tribe, but they are to go and they're going to talk. And so then they came, as they came to investigate, they came to the children of Reuben, to the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, to the land of Gilead. And they spoke with them, saying, Thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what treachery is this that you have committed against the God of Israel, to turn away this day from following the Lord, in that you've built for yourselves an altar that you might rebel this day against the Lord? Now think about their question for a minute. Their question really is a matter of feeling that these folks have rebelled against God. Now, in our way of thinking, we would say, well, that's no reason to go to war. But it was a little different in that day. I mean, we would say, if somebody would say, let's just say somebody came to church here for 10, 15 years and for whatever reason decided to quit. We're not going to go out and start a war with them. We may go visit them. We may call them. We may write cards to them. We may see them in the store and ask them to come back. But we're not going to go burn their house down and take their life. But you see, they saw this as such a reproach to God. A shame to them, but a reproach to God. Notice what they said, that you might rebel. A rebel is someone who deliberately sets his will against another's will, resists the will. Why are you deliberately resisting the will of God? Might be another way of saying it. Why did you rebel? Verse 17. Is the iniquity of Peor not enough for us? Now what happens here is the questions go into two past arguments. Go back, if you want to know more about Peor, go to the book of Numbers, go to chapter 25. Is not the iniquity of Peor not enough for us, from which we were not cleansed till this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord? The idea of a plague in the congregation of the Lord probably carries you back to Achan that we studied in the first part of this chapter. But that you must turn away this day from following the Lord. And it shall be, if you rebel today against the Lord, that tomorrow he'll be angry. But notice, here's their fear. He'll be angry with the whole congregation of Israel. In other words, he's not just going to be angry at you, he's going to be angry at us too. It's not just going to be you folks on the east side of the Jordan River that he's going to be mad at. Y'all the ones built the altar. Really, he should be mad at y'all, but he's going to be mad at us. And so we don't like this. We don't appreciate this. Nevertheless, verse 19, if the land of your possession is unclean, then cross over to the land of the possession of the Lord, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession among us. In other words, if your land's a problem, then just stay over here with us. But do not rebel against the Lord, nor rebel against us by building yourselves an altar beside the altar of the Lord our God. Now, it wasn't beside it. It was on the same side of the river, but it wasn't anywhere really close miles-wise. It was several miles away if you look on the map. These folks saw this as an affront to God, an affront to them, and an affront to the worship of God. They did not understand. You see, that they had this, if you will, they had this warm glow. We fought, we've conquered the land, we've given everybody their portion. Go home, everything's all right. It's peaceful. We've conquered the land that God has promised to give us. God has given it to us. We're good. Go home. Look here. Here's all this loot that you all helped us get. You take it with you. You take all this with y'all. Yeah, everybody's all right. Everybody's happy. But when they hear about this altar, they go berserk. They're trying to stand up for themselves, for their family, for God. And also, and rightfully so, they still see these folks as their brethren. Even though they're just going to the other side of the river, they're still their brethren. And so, verse 20, did not Achan the son of Zerah commit a trespass in the accursed thing, and the wrath fell on all the congregation of Israel, and that man did not perish alone in his iniquity. You see, they're afraid for themselves. They're afraid of the consequences that will come upon them all. Because remember, it was Achan's sin, but yet the children of Israel didn't get to gain what? They lost at Ai, right? And so they had to regroup and they had to go against them again. Well, it talks about Peor, Numbers, like saying, go back to Numbers and see that story. And it took forever for the land to be purified again. And so, for the recklessness, if you will, of a few or one, punishment can be great for all. And so they're afraid of that. Anything anybody like to say or add? About 20 miles. Yeah. 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 Well, I think we get the answer a little later. But yeah, I understand their side. I really do. I understand their side. But it's interesting because basically the way I understand this last paragraph is that the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh are basically saying, oh, we meant this for a good thing. And you all didn't take it that way. That's not what we meant. Let's read. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh, oh, mercy, answered and said to the heads of the divisions of Israel. Now, see, here's their response. Now think about it. Everybody united. There's a problem. They investigate the problem. They come at them with questions. So they're saying, what are you thinking? Which is what you should always do. Well, here's their answer. The Lord God of gods, he knows, and let Israel itself know. If it is in rebellion or if treachery against the Lord, do not save us this day. Now, here's they're saying, look at us and understand that if this was wrong, and if God sees this as wrong, let it be just on us, not on all of y'all. In other words, let it be on those of us, that Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh. In other words, those to the east. Let it be on us. Don't let it be on you all, because you all didn't do it. You had nothing about it, and we've got all that. But notice, keep on reading what he says. Verse 23. If we have built ourselves an altar to turn from following the Lord, or if to offer on it burnt offerings or grain offerings, or if to offer peace offerings on it, let the Lord himself require an account. In other words, if that's what we built it for. And this is, understand that they know why they built it, but they're basically saying, if, it's a proposition. If we built it to replace or to be a second to the altar that's at Shiloh, then it's our fault. We take responsibility and we will take an accounting of it. But then look at verse 24. But now there's, if you write in your Bible or in your own mind, underline, highlight, whatever, that word, but. In fact, we have done it for fear. The word fear there means for anxious care. It's the idea of for dread, for anxious care, for a reason saying, in time to come, your descendants may speak to our descendants. In other words, those of you on the west side may speak to those of our children on the east side, saying, what have you to do with the Lord God of Israel? In other words, why'd you build this? Are you still faithful to God? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between you and us. You children of Reuben, the children of Gad, you have no part in the Lord. In other words, he says, there's going to come a time in which those of you that have children on the west side, they're going to think those of us on the east side have forsaken God. Now, it's interesting because if we follow history, that is what happens. The children on the east side, remember we said last week that they acted really, their land, they themselves were a buffer for any of the enemies coming from the east against the children of Israel. But while they were a buffer, part of the problem is that the on beyond, if you will, those on the east were folks that were idolatrous and wicked and amoral, and they infiltrated Reuben and that area of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and turned them. So in some ways, they are prophetic in what they're saying here. So your descendants would make our descendants cease fearing the Lord. Therefore, we said, and notice here's still part of their answer. We said, here's why we built it. Let us now prepare to build ourselves an altar, not for burnt offerings nor for sacrifice. In other words, we didn't build it as a place of worship to come and burn sacrifices upon, but that it may be a witness between you and us and our generation after us, that we may perform the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings, with our sacrifice, with our peace offerings, that your descendants may not say to our descendants in time to come, you have no part in the Lord. Therefore, we said that it will be when they say this to us, to our generation in time to come, that we may say, here's the replica of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, though not for burnt offerings, not for sacrifices, but it's a witness between you and us. In other words, they saw this as a representation of a gift, of saying, we did this for you all. We did it to represent just the fact that we are just like you all, and we love the Lord. That really the only thing that really divides us is the river, nothing else. We're all the same. Far be it for us, verse 29, that we should rebel against the Lord and turn from following the Lord this day, to build an altar for burnt offerings, for grain offerings, or for sacrifices besides the altar of the Lord our God, which is before his tabernacle. Now, when Phinehas the priest and the rulers of the congregation, the heads of the divisions of Israel, who were with him, heard the words that the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the children of Manasseh spoke, it pleased them. It's interesting. The word pleased there means it was good to their eyes. I don't know, that just intrigued me. But then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, the children of Manasseh, this day we perceive the Lord is among us, because you have not committed this treachery against the Lord. Now you have delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of the Lord. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, the rulers returned from the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan, to the children of Israel, and brought back word to them. So the things pleased the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed God. They spoke no more of going against them in battle to destroy the land where the children of Reuben and Gad dwelt. The children of Reuben, the children of Gad, called the altar witness, for it is a witness between us and the Lord. They really saw, if you will, they saw the altar, they built the altar, and they saw it sort of as a representation of the common faith that they shared with their brethren on the west side of the river. It's a beautiful picture for the church today, that when you start to do something and you're united, you stay united, but you stay united by, you hear the reports, you go find out what the people are thinking. You find out what's on their mind. You find out what they're saying. And evidently, there was probably more to it than just this little talk. They probably saw their facial expressions, they saw their body positions, their gestures. They realized these were not threatening people. These were folks that are our brethren, and we're all right with them. And so there's unity that exists at this point from a historical standpoint with the children of Israel because they were willing to go talk to the people. They gave them their answer. They believed it, and the land was at rest. Now, what's going to happen next in the book of Joshua? We're going to see basically Joshua is going to, in the next chapter, in chapter 23, he's going to bid them farewell. He's at the end of his life and at the end of his tenure, and he's going to bid them farewell. This is it. And we will get through chapter 23, and we may get through most of chapter 24, which then leads me to this point, and I know Ken needs to ring the bell. And that is this. We've been trying to kind of rotate, and I think you've enjoyed those things, and the elders and I have talked about it, and we're in agreement that we would like to keep that going. And so I don't have per se anything planned after this from standpoint. I don't have a topic. If you have one that you'd like, whether it takes 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Length doesn't matter. But we'll talk about those things. I'll come up with something if you don't, but I'd like to have your input. And so if you've got, like say, a topic that may spread into several topics that will carry us a few weeks, and then we'll come back to a biblical text. Let's well, let's bow forward to prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the blessing of it. Thankful for the opportunity to study your word. Thankful for loving us and watching over us. Thankful for the fact that you do care for us, and thankful for the fact that you do watch over us and show us through scriptures how really we should deal with our brethren, and how we should always talk, and we should always love, and we should always give each other the benefit of the doubt. We ask that you watch over us, that you bless us and keep us and hold us as we hold to you. This is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. I'm going to bring the card right here. The card itself is going to go to the Covenant School. The membership committee decided that we would send a card as a congregation to the Covenant School. You all know the story, but it's just to, make sure they know that we're thinking about them as well. So I'll bring the card up here and you can sign it. And it'll still be here Sunday, as Jay said. Thank y'all.